G'day guys, welcome back to True Eagle to review that Collingwood game. Weird game to try and analyse. I'm going to start this off with a controversial statement that I know will lose some of you. Some of you will like it, and some of you will take exception to this. I'm really comfortable with how we're building as a football team right now, and I know that's a weird conclusion to make from a game where we were beaten badly. And let's be real, let's call it what it is. This was a one-sided battering between a very good football team and a team that is a fair way off the pace at the moment. So let me clarify why. I genuinely think Collingwood were sensational in that game. And look, yes, they had some outs, and yes, they were missing some soldiers, and I think both teams were missing players in the actual game. I think Collingwood might have copped an extra one or one for a little bit longer, but that did not affect the game. The way they played was probably the most ominous form I've seen from Collingwood this season. And it is contextual, they couldn't do that to an Essendon, but I do think they came to play in this game with an absolute point to prove. They looked galvanised, and from the outset, we were not even close to them. But I think a lot of where we lost this game, for the most part, and to contrast it with, some of our, poor losses over the last few years, I just felt like there were so many moments where we would make a bit of a mistake, and then you would just see a swarm of Collingwood players rapidly attack the ball and then run through with numbers and create overlap, and the foot skills and the attack on the footy, we could not match, and we are not equipped to match. And that is why I'm relatively comfortable with the way this game played out, because I don't care what anyone says. I don't think this was a case of us not trying. And I know that should be the bare minimum, but what have we come to expect from, the Eagles from the middle of 2021 to the end of last year? Their tendency to stop trying in the middle of games was a concern, and that did not happen in this game. Now, we got butchered in contested ball, which we're normally good at. Obviously, missing Yo, it wouldn't have meant that we didn't get butchered in the contested stakes, but he is also like the number one driver of that in this team statistically. They butchered us on that. They butchered us on the outside. Their tackling and pressure. Their pressure was insane. We have not come up against the team with that level of pressure. I thought the Bulldogs' pressure in round 3 was sensational. I think this took to a new level, and across the board, Collingwood are the number one pressure and number one tackling team in the competition. They did not give us an inch, and I thought we tried really hard. Should we be expecting more? Maybe, but let's be pragmatic. We are not a very good football team, and we need to accept of where we are in the premiership cycle right now. And I think it's fair to conclude that of the two teams, Collingwood might have had an extra injury on us. I don't know. I think if you look at the injury list in totality, it'd be pretty similar. But we as a rebuilding side are not as equipped to deal with those. So let's take a look at some of the teams, the teams that took the field in this game, okay? So the midfield is where we got slaughtered in this game. I'm not going to say that it wasn't the case. It was, and I will go into more specifics into who played well and who didn't. I'm not saying it was a good performance by any stretch. The positive for me came from the fact that we kept trying, and in the third term in particular, I felt we did a really good job of equaling the contest. And don't fool yourself into thinking that Collingwood dropped off. I'd say in the last quarter, the game died. In the third quarter, they were still relentless, and I felt like we mitigated that really, really well. The difference between the two sides is I think we had 5 shots on goal and missed them all. From a scoreless quarter, that was our best quarter of the game, and I honestly thought, that we got a lot out of that. But to look at the midfield, yes, okay, both sides have injuries, but look at, who they have in their selected midfield. They had Scott Pendlebury, who had 5 clearances and 28 possessions. He's still a good player. We do not have a Scott Pendlebury in our team. Jack Crisp won a ton of possessions and clearances. Nick Dacos, 7 clearances himself. Josh Dacos, a couple of other midfielders. Side bottom plays more on the outside. Lipinski's listed as a midfielder there. You compare that to guys like Tim Kelly, who's our number one midfielder at the moment, and then there's probably a huge drop. Who's the second best midfielder we have in this team? It's probably Harley Reid. I thought he played pretty well. He's played, 9 games of AFL football now? Maybe 8. I think it's 8 actually. Then there's the Dom Sheed, who is struggling. Luke Edwards, Campbell Chester, Jaden Hunt. That team on paper does not stack up at all against the selected team of Collingwood. If you look at where, I think a lot of their injuries are, a lot of them are in the forward 50. And, I thought our backs held up okay. That wasn't where we lost this game. It was legitimately the ball going out of the centre. And to contrast it with some of the worst games we played last year, again, I'm open to your opinions. Tell me I'm wrong, but I don't believe it was anything like last year where you could point to players on the field just not chasing or not going hard enough. Yeah, I guess in a sense we didn't go hard enough in this game because Collingwood are the benchmark and they went way harder than us, but I still thought we tried pretty damn hard. And the ball was just moving at such a rapid rate. They were hitting the ball at such a relentless pace for the first 3 quarters, and we couldn't match that. And therefore, a lot of the time our defenders could not have defended some of the forward entries that were coming in. As for their back six, if I'm not mistaken, that is the same selected back six that won the premiership. So what's the conclusion there? I mean, I just think Collingwood can cope with their injuries a lot better than us. And, this was literally a game between the premiership team and the Wooden Spooners last year. Did the scoreline deserve to be closer? I'm not even going to say that. I thought it was about right in the end. I'm glad we didn't let it get to 100 points. I suppose that's part of where I was pleased about the result. But I'm really looking at about what I saw on field. And honestly, if that is our baseline, that's not too bad. It's not too bad. And again, I draw back to the fact that we are one of the most talent efficient teams in the competition with a above average injury list. And it so happens that a lot of our best players are on that injury list as well. And we got some more injuries to worry about from this game. So just a quick look at the team stats from this game. 59 inside 50s to 34. That's kind of how the game felt. It was very one-sided. Did we have any meaningfully good wins in this stat department? Not really. We had 5 less marks. We did out-tackle them, but we out-tackled them. When you have so much less of the ball, you kind of want to be out-tackling them. But on the one hand, we've seen results not even in West Coast games only, but in other games where the team that gets more possessions still out-tackles their opponent. At least we didn't let that happen. I'm not sure how much can really be gleaned from looking at these team stats. I'm conceding that we got well beaten. There's absolutely no doubt about that. So to look at contested possession in particular, minus 31, that's a pretty big beating. It feels like at the moment we're a pretty good contested ball side, across the competition. We're above average, I think. I don't know. This result actually might tip us down. But we are not talented enough or equipped enough to be able to win games outside of winning the contested ball. That's where our game starts. That is not the only way you win football games. That is the only way that we win football games on the data of this season. And, I think we actually beat Essendon in that stat. And I think they ranked fairly well for that stat. And we beat them +2. And we got closer to winning that game than perhaps we should have based on the inside 50 count. So we never gave ourselves a chance because Collingwood dominated the contested ball. And then on top of that, their ability to create overlap and cut through on our transition. Again, I don't think a lot of this was through lack of effort. There's a talent deficiency, and Collingwood at the moment are one of the form sides of the competition. So I'm being very pragmatic about the nature of this loss, and in some ways I am more encouraged by it than some of the losses we had in the first 3 rounds. That reflects the commentary, and maybe that's a weak argument because nobody rates the commentary, right? You can always expect it to be very pro Collingwood. Not to sound salty, but that's kind of true. It is generally pro Collingwood, but in this specific case, the glow up for Collingwood, the inflating of Collingwood in the commentary, I thought was justified. I thought it was there. And in the same breath, I thought Dermott gave us a lot of credit for not looking that bad. And in this case, I think he was on the money. I don't think there was too much, pandering. Maybe Dermott hasn't watched us this year and thought we were going to be way worse. I don't know. I've still got that feeling, as the injuries mount up, I'm a little bit worried things will get back to where they were. I think we're seeing this at the moment with Richmond, right? And it reminds, Richmond, who just lost by 90 points to the Western Bulldogs this week. You can go a few weeks missing a whole stack of players and the spirit can hold up. I think back to both 22, certainly 23, between rounds 3 and 6, that was the first month where we had diabolical injuries. The results weren't too bad and then it got really bad. I think we are now seeing that with Richmond. They have been pretty okay in terms of their effort, their pressure, intensity. I think they're ranked pretty highly for pressure acts in the competition. That goes all right for a few weeks, and then the bad results start happening because they can't sustain that. And the way that relates to this is if our injury list continues to grow, I'm worried about how it gets. But I'm assessing on the first 9 weeks of this season, and I'm fine with it. I'm comfortable with it. Let's go through some individuals. There's not a whole heap to pick out. I think the 4 best players, I've got it ranked by fantasy points here. Our top 4 ranked fantasy point players were probably also the best 4 in the field. They were also all defenders. Witherden probably played his best game I've ever seen him play for the Eagles. I think he had, 8 marks, 30 possessions. He went 90% efficiency, 500 metres gained. I've been a little bit lukewarm on Witherden. I've probably never really had him in our best 22, but hats off. Great performance. I think Duggan's quietly building a pretty good year now as well. I was critical in the first month or so for some turnovers. I thought he battled really hard today. I thought he was solid. I thought Cole was pretty good. Defensive effort's good. Barras, I think he's still building. The next ranked player is Tim Kelly. I don't think Tim Kelly had a particularly good day. Now, he doesn't have the support in the midfield right now, but at the same time, I was still kind of hoping for Kelly to lift in the way that he has. He has done that for years, and I don't mean every single week, but I just can think of a number of occasions Tim Kelly tried to put this team on his back. I was hoping for that today, and he had, a pretty quiet day, which is disappointing. Who else played well? I thought Harley Reid was good. Yeah, it was interesting. I had a look at some of the Collingwood fan forums and stuff like that, and Instagram, and I was just curious to see what they were thinking of the game. And it's funny to see that they all hate Harley Reid and calling him an arrogant tosser and all that. And I realised, it's because he got compared to Dacos in the media this week. Now the media has fueled this hatred of Harley Reid. He's not a tosser, he's not arrogant, and he played well today. I know Dacos was one of the best players in the field, and Dacos has had an unreal fortnight. Very impactful player in this game, but Harley Reid took a hanger, had 17 possessions, won a number of clearances, and that bullet pass towards the end of the game I thought was really positive. Another little side note: this has been a very glowingly positive review. I realise it's probably not coming across as balanced. We didn't play particularly well. I would say that on the Dom Sheed and Liam Ryan selections. I think I was thinking halfway through this game, looking at Liam Ryan having 2 possessions in the first half, bearing in mind we weren't getting the ball inside 50, where we had 13 inside 50s to half time. Thankfully, the second half was much improved. We had about 21, I reckon. I was thinking, clearly we selected Liam Ryan too early, and, Simo was saying he was quite nervous before the game back. I don't know if he was ready. Thankfully, in the second half, I thought, without being outstanding, he did kick a pretty good goal, took some nice marks, did a couple of nice things, and I just think that might be the catalyst for him getting back into form. He has missed a lot of footy. Dom Sheed, I don't think, played particularly well. Now, I just tried to look up the centre bounce attendances, and because I'm filming this right after the game, they haven't actually been updated yet. So forgive me, but what I was trying to find out was how much time on ball is Dom Sheed getting. It's not so much an excuse, for his performances. I think he looks a touch off the pace, and I think we are getting increasingly removed from his best form. The other elephant in the room, though, is that we don't really have anyone to replace him with. And, we'll talk about selection in a video specifically for the Melbourne game, but yeah, I'm reluctant to bring in another debutant. We had a second gamer today. We had a debutant in Tyrell Dewar, and I think bringing in Clay Hall, for instance, I don't think that's the right way to go. But my point on Dom Sheed was the fact that he's not getting time on ball, partially it's probably due to fitness and load management and building him up slowly. But to me, I'm actually starting to think that Simo kind of knows the extent to which we're getting exposed when Dom Sheed is in the centre. Now, I'm not trying to shit on Dom Sheed or anything like that. I think he's probably getting over-criticised. I think he had some moments in this game where he was poor. He wasn't particularly bad. I think it's worth looking at the centre bounce statistics to guide our opinion onto how much of the footy should he be winning, because he didn't have a lot of it today. When you consider, if he's playing mostly on the wing, you look across the season, across every single wingman we've had, I don't know how many people playing on the wing, maybe the exception of Jaden Hunt, who does play a little bit back, I think. Other than that, none of them are getting 20 possessions a game. So, again, that's hard to assess him on output, but I did think it was kind of telling that we didn't put him in the centre much at all. At least I don't think so. I don't have the stats to back that up. My point being, if he's not getting a lot of time at the centre bounces in a game like this where we don't have much of a midfield selected, my thought is that the match committee and Simo are aware of his deficiencies in terms of defensive pressure. And long story short, I do think that there may actually be the possibility that he could get dropped once we have some waffle performances. I hope that made sense. It made perfect sense in my head. On the young guys, we didn't see Johnston get a lot of the footy, and I think he had 8 possessions from 2 quarters and maybe 3/4 of a third one. I'm not sure exactly when Petrocelli went off, and Dewar had a goal on 10 possessions. Both of these guys clearly have AFL traits. I was very pleased with what I saw. That was probably the most extended vision I've had in a game form of either of these players. And the traits are just there. Harvey Johnston's ball use, his composure, his foot skills, they're exactly as advertised. And Tyrell Dewar as well did some really nice things. Like, he kicked a sick goal, but also just the way he sort of composed himself in general play, I think in the third quarter, and hit this really nice switch inbound. I liked the confidence of that. He's obviously got good foot skills. And I definitely want to keep both of these guys in the team for at least next week. I thought Dewar had a great debut. Just a little bit of talk on the injuries. Petrocelli's done an ankle. That's really frustrating. Hopefully it's not bad. My gut feel is with ankles, we don't have a good track record. McGovern, this is weird. This is getting weird. So McGovern's gone off, I think he got winded, or we assumed he'd been winded. Later on, we saw he'd gone down into the rooms. And you guys might know before I do as to whether or not, what the extent of that injury is, or we might find out in a few days. I haven't seen Simo's press conference yet. The weird aspect of it is, this is the third time he's done an injury of this nature. Going back to 2018, where he got, a punctured lung or a punctured kidney. What was it? He was pissing blood, so I think it was a kidney. There's that. There's the crushed ribs he sustained in 2022, I want to say, where somebody hit him from behind. This injury, whatever it is, it looks lung and organ related. I could be wrong, but these injuries, I don't think they're cumulative. It's not like you do one, you're more likely to do it again, right? I could be wrong. This is just incredibly weird and bad luck for Jeremy McGovern. And I shudder to think what it's going to look like if we have him out for a prolonged period. I do think Harry Edwards coming back in is probably good for a list development point of view, but in terms of the quality of our best team right now, that sucks, and I hope he's okay. But again, I don't know. I suppose we'll talk about more of that in the Melbourne preview. Okay, to summarise my thoughts. It's come across very positive, which is probably a little bit off tone for the results. But at the same time, I do think you need to look at things contextually. And, while it was frustrating, while we got bested completely, and we are that far off the best teams in the comp right now, I think it's important to bear in mind Collingwood played really well. Their injuries did not really affect them that much. Their midfield monstered ours. Their midfield on paper is so much better than ours, as it should be. They just won the premiership. They had a number of mature age players come in, and I'll highlight 2 guys, Lockie Sullivan, and in particular that Joe Richards guy, 26 and 24. They were fantastic. And it made me think, with Joe Richards in particular, that was his first game, I think. I was like, is he, talented, or is this a product of being in a good system in a team that's playing well? And there probably is a little bit of that, but then he kicked this amazing goal where he just stopped on a dime and slapped it across his body and hit it from 45. And I was like, no, there's probably some talent in that as well. Where do we find one of those? Where is it? ebay.com/mature age recruits? Because I think we could do with a couple of those. Don't actually Google that. It's probably going to get some weird results. But it did make me think, do we try and look at, some mature age options in the waffle and maybe the mid-season draft? Hopefully we don't need that, but it is entirely possible. That's not too far away. Do we find a forward or centre player who's fast, Not all mature age waffle players or VFL players are going to be made equal. I think what we could do is some powerful outside runners, some forward line potency. Again, probably a topic for another video, but I thought those guys stepped up really well. It was a great performance from Collingwood, no matter what way you slice it. Yeah, it would have been nicer to be closer, but I think considering the midfield deficiencies on top of the fact that we are not the deepest pool of talent right now at West Coast, I thought that was acceptable. I thought it was acceptable, and on the whole, the reason I'm comfortable with it and pleased with where we're at is that this could be so much worse. And I know people won't like that because we are in a results-driven industry. That's some of the comments I've gotten before. And you treat it like the corporate world. And I don't quite agree with that. We got slapped. And I think this is one of those games where we can take some learnings from. We got a really good look at a really good team in full flight. Collingwood were in full flight today. They were fantastic. There is learnings from that. And, we've got a tougher test against the D's next week. And I think if we play like that, we'll get a shitload closer, unless Melbourne also play like that, which is entirely possible. They're a very good team. So let me know in the comments what you think, guys. Let me know if you think I'm being too positive. I don't think so. Bear in mind, I've had 1 hour sleep. I've been back in England for a week now. The jet lag, I'm still on USA time. I hate my life. But for now, I'll say goodbye, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.